Can Nvidia generate more free cash flow than Apple? An analyst believes that's the case for next year. And we're going to discuss why in today's episode. But first, make sure to hit the thumbs up. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, as this is going to be the best place you're going to find any semiconductor and AI news. Make sure to check out the pinned comment for my special offer at fool.com/Jose. And more importantly, check out my free daily newsletter that just got a revamp and shares a lot of free information about the semiconductor market. The link is down below. So let's get started.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so first, let's just kind of look at what the current free cash flow is in trailing 12 months. The current king in the free cash flow maker when looking at the Mag 7, and the Mag 7 is Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Alphabet, Meta, Amazon, and Tesla. Right. Number one is Apple, generating about $109 billion in free cash flow in the trailing 12 months. Number two is Microsoft with $72 billion. Number three, which many might be surprised, is Nvidia with roughly 57. Number fourth is Apple, not far behind, about $1 billion less than Nvidia at about 56. Number five is Meta Platforms at 52. Number 6 is Amazon at 43, and number 7 is Tesla with a measly about $4 billion. So first, I want to say this is probably an eye-opener for a lot of people. Many people didn't know that Nvidia actually generated more free cash flow in the 2012 months than Alphabet and Meta Platforms or Amazon, right? So we can definitely see that this is a monster free cash flow machine. Now, at a recent conference, and we actually did a video on this conference on December 3rd, I believe I released this video, where Nvidia was at UBS Global Technology and AI Conference, and we heard a lot of great information. And the most important thing there that I found interesting was Timothy, the analyst, noted that Nvidia, like we saw, generated about $56 billion in free cash flow in the past quarter. And he believes, he actually has it in his analysis, even though the quote is misspoke here, but he mentions, I have you generating about $120 billion in calendar of 2025. So that is insane. If this company generates about $120 billion in calendar of 2025, it will put this over Apple. Apple generates, usually has kind of like a growth of around 5 to 8%, even if it grows around that same level next year, which I personally don't believe that's the case. Right now, we continue to see a weakness in the phone business, and we know that Apple is investing a little bit more money in AI right now. So I believe if this analyst is correct, Nvidia is going to be the biggest cash flow machine when looking at the Mag 7. So we're going to look at how those numbers work out in a bit. But one thing that I think investors should also know is, what is Nvidia planning to do with all its cash? Because the analyst believes if they generate around $120 billion in calendar year, even if you assume a $50 billion buyback, that would give them about a $70 billion of surplus. This company, as we're going to see, barely gives $2 billion in dividends. So even with that, this company will still be able to add about $70 billion in its net cash position, which in theory, right now it has about $40 billion. We're going to see it would give them about $100 billion in cash by the end of next year. What would this company do with that money? And Colette, which is the CFO, mentioned the following. First, they're going to continue to invest in what they believe will continue to innovate their AI solutions. So that would be the first thing that they're going to continue to do. The second thing they will do is kind of work into either bringing mergers or acquisitions to the company. We recently talked about a very small acquisition yesterday, so we can see that that Nvidia is actually planning and doing this. Next, they want to think of maybe adding new types of business models as AI continues to evolve. Obviously, they're going to want to add more businesses that can help generate even more and more money. And after that, they will determine return to shareholders via buybacks or dividends. So they have it in that order, because the company mentions that they're not a fan of excess cash. And this is something that most businesses do, right? They don't really want to hold more cash in their balance sheet. They'll rather have that money work for them. So within the upcoming quarters, we are going to hear how they're going to be able to use that cash effectively. Now, I just wanted to look at some numbers. So in free cash flow and quarterly revenues, the most recent quarter, the company's free cash flow compared to revenue was roughly 48% margins. That is insane. That means that nearly 50% of this company's total revenue goes straight to free cash flow. And that's right now because this company does have those strong margins. And while those margins are going to get a little bit weaker in the upcoming quarters, it's not going to be by much. So I personally don't believe free cash flow is going to see a huge hit. I mean, there are some quarters where it looks like it probably was even closer to 50%, but right now it's about 47, and in the past few quarters it's actually been in the high 40s since early 2023 or mid 2023. So next I want to look at, now that we know kind of their margins, right? Margins are somewhere between 40 to 47.5%. I wanted to see what analysts were expecting in forms of revenue, to see if maybe we can see what this analyst is expecting for Nvidia to generate roughly $120 billion in cash next year. Revenue estimates for current fiscal year, which ends in about 3 months from now, or a little bit less than 3 months. It actually ends at the end of January, so about 2 months from now, would be $129 billion. Revenue for next fiscal year would be around $195 billion, and revenue for next 2 fiscal years from now would be about $235 billion. So I actually did some free cash flow calculations to see, and we looked at, right, that high number was around 47.5%. So with these revenue estimates, these are kind of the margins. I kind of played with different margins, 35% margins. I don't think that's ever going to be the case in the near future. Obviously, it could be possible maybe later on, but in the near future, I think 35 and 40% are underselling Nvidia's potential. I think right now we're going to be closer to 45, 47.5, maybe even closer to 49%. But even with those analyst expectations, we only see Nvidia for next fiscal year generating about $92.1 billion, far below what UBS was thinking. Now this has me thinking, right? Because those analysts numbers, these revenue estimates, are the average. That means that UBS is more on the bullish side. And if we look at revenue estimates for Nvidia for the next current year, the average is about 195 that we saw. There is a low. Some people believe it's going to be about 156 billion, but there are some that believe next year can actually be around 270 billion dollars. Now, I think 270 billion might be a little bit too bullish because there is a huge amount of capacity constraint in the supply market. So I actually tried to play out with maybe more bullish numbers. So even if next year they generate around $230 billion, that's still only about $110 billion in free cash flow. I believe $230 billion is actually possible, but it seems like UBS is either expecting more than $230 billion in revenue next year or expects higher cash margins. Overall, UBS is very, very bullish, but I wouldn't say is completely irrational or impossible for this to be the case. Now, Nvidia, like we see, total dividends in the trailing 12 months pays about $700 million. So it's not that this company returns much to shareholders. In forms of buybacks in the trailing 12 months, it's done about 28 billion. But this, I believe with this upcoming year or this upcoming quarter, it's going to get closer to about 40 billion, maybe 45 billion. We can also see total long-term debt. This company doesn't have much, roughly 8.4 billion, and cash and short-term investments of roughly $40 billion. So overall, I mean, I think Nvidia, I don't know if it'll do about 120 billion in calendar year of 2025. I believe it could be closer to $100 billion for sure. And Nvidia is definitely becoming an ultimate cash machine. So one thing that I'm pretty excited about is seeing that what Nvidia is going to use with this money, more importantly, continue to see the acquisitions and continue to see how it innovates in the AI space. Because remember, Nvidia is not a market taker, they are a market maker. And now with all this money in hand, how much market can they make? What new solution, what new product, what new software space can they enter into that no one has thought about? And I think that's the great thing about being an Nvidia investor. And actually, before I end out, a few things. I want to take a closer look at Nvidia stock and kind of share my overall thoughts. But first, make sure to check out my newsletter. It's completely free. I just talked a little bit about Nvidia's acquisition of VinBrain, and the link is down below. It will support the channel. Every day I want to release something new about the semiconductor market. We're going to see it's about, I talk about multiple topics, and in less than 10 minutes, you're going to learn a lot more about the AI and semiconductor space. Now, in forms of Nvidia, the stock right now is sitting at 142. In the past 5 days, the stock is up a nice amount. Obviously, year to date, the stock is doing amazing. Personally, for me, these are not levels where I would do heavy dollar cost averaging. If I wanted to enter into Nvidia right now, it would be in very small positions. I believe the market gives opportunities to the patient investors, and I think Nvidia will do the same in the future. Right now, Nvidia is my #1 position. I have no intentions of selling, but personally, I'm not adding either. So take care, have a good day, and see you all next time.